so I'm calling the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District Board meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda
Roll call.
is the roll call. Tori?
Oh, sorry. Manager Lowe? All right, Manager Schmaltz,
Present.
Manager Baki,
Here.
Manager Taves,
Present.
President Anderson.
I am present. All right, next is setting of the meeting agenda. Is there anything new that anyone wants to add from the board?
President Anderson,
Yes, Manager Baki.
did we want to include the SMART goals to share with the board?
I think that's a good idea, and we can, you can discuss it. I don't think that Tori has a visual to display, but we can send it out after the meeting to all the board members. Mike is out of town, so we really want him here as well for that discussion. So we'll just send it out to you after the meeting is over, and then you have some time to look at it and make your comments before the next meeting. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything else? Staff, anything from you? No? All right, let's move on.
Do we have to accept the agenda?
Yes, we need a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I will make the motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Manager Baki. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Manager Taves. Any further discussion? Okay, call the roll, please.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Next item is new business. A is Chisago County Joint Powers Agreement.
I can introduce this board agenda item, board president and board members.
Okay.
It is for the Chisago County Joint Powers Agreement. This would be a continuance of the agreement between Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District and Chisago County to continue our partnership with watercraft inspections on Comfort Lake. The main change this year was the hourly rate was increased to $23.50. The agreement would provide for up to 5 part-time seasonal watercraft inspectors employed, trained, and supervised by Chisago County. And the amount that we would reimburse them would not exceed $35,000, and they will also provide us with $5,000 in Chisago County AIS grant money. Staff would suggest that the board accepts the agreement or approve the joint powers agreement.
Okay. Is there a motion on the floor to accept the Chisago County Joint Powers Agreement? I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second that motion. Manager
Thank you.
Schmaltz.
Thank you, Manager Schmaltz. Any further discussion? Okay, the only thing I wanted to bring up is if the Comfort Lake Association is still deciding what to give, what amount to give above the traditional $500. And the question at the last meeting was whether or not we need more people at our particular landing so that we can have maybe coverage where there hasn't been any during the normal routine.
So currently for Comfort Lake, we are planning on having 525 hours of inspections at Comfort Lake. This is a slight increase from 2024. So if the board or If the Comfort Lake Association would like to see additional hours. Beyond that 525, additional money would be needed.
Mhm.
I'd be happy to further discuss
Okay,
that item.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was, I don't think it's linked to this agreement anyway, but we can talk about it afterwards. Before, yeah,
It would not be tied to the street.
okay, all right, very good. Any other questions or comments?
Just to clarify, I believe that the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District funds for boat inspections would be distributed evenly among the launches that are available. So I think Forest Lake has 3, Comfort Lake has 1. And do we do any other launches besides those 4?
Bone Lake as well has
Yeah.
1.
Bone Lake is also included that, and I think that's, if I recall from past years, we used to split the dollars available from the watershed district equally among those 5 launches, and then any other additional monies that came in, if they're designated for a certain lake, then they should go to that lake, et cetera. So is that the way we were planning to do this this year?
So we have about 500 hours on Comfort and Bone Lake. And then we have about 2,400 on Forest Lake. The reason for the higher percentage of hours at Forest Lake is that's where we see the greatest amount of boat traffic. So it's about, I want to say 17% for Bone, 17% for Comfort, with the remaining 60-ish percent of the money being spent out on Forest Lake.
And that's expected. I mean, it's a bigger lake. It has 3 landings. So that's to be expected. What I was talking about is extra dollars over what is currently budgeted. And so if that's still a possibility, that was the only question that I wanted to make.
Okay,
Okay,
thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying that.
You bet. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll call the call the motion.
All right, Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Number C is 2025 water monitoring plan.
B,
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over D, didn't I? 2025 aquatic invasive species prevention and management plan. That's next.
I'll introduce this topic as well. The 2025 AIS Prevention and Management Plan is for the activities that will be taking place on the lakes in the district. It's not approving budgets at all for this motion. That was determined in the August 2024 meeting. So the plan is to continue the AIS surveys with Blue Water Science, continue our watercraft inspections at our boat launches. And then we planned our treatments for aquatic invasive species based on 2024 activities. However, those treatments will be determined by the surveys.
And nothing's changed from the protocol from last year, correct?
No, there's no
Okay.
large changes at all.
Yeah, I didn't, I read all of this stuff online this time. I should never do that. I always need a printed copy. So,
There also
What kind
was
of-
a recorded presentation
Yeah.
available for the board as well.
yeah, I'm not quite into that yet, but
Well,
I still like
thank you for
the-
providing, thank you
Yeah.
for providing that recording. That was good to see.
Yeah.
Matthew has done a very good job on those, so I'd like to give him props for the work he did.
good. All right, any other comments or questions? If not, let's call the motion.
I'll move to approve the 2025 Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District AIS Prevention and Management Plan.
Mhm. Is there a
I will
second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Manager Taves, Manager Smalls, thank you. If there's no further discussion, let's call the roll call.
all right, Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Next item is the 2025 water monitoring plan.
I can introduce that topic. Madam President and managers, for your discussion and approval is the 2025 monitoring plan. It's largely similar to what we've done in past years. We've got 6 long-term stream monitoring sites. Those are the ISCO sites. We've got 12 lakes that we'll be monitoring through the Met Council's CAMP program, both with volunteers and with staff. We've got our do-it-yourself diagnostic monitoring that'll take place on the direct ranges to Comfort and Little Comfort lakes. And we have our citizen-assisted tributary or CAT monitoring, which will look at all 3 basins of Forest Lake. New this year, we're going back to our diagnostic monitoring rotation, starting with the Sunrise River. This data collection will help to support the Accelerated Implementation Grant, the AIG grant that we just got. So we'll do monitoring and that'll correspond and help to inform some of the modeling and other work that we're doing with the AIG grant. So focus on the Sunrise River from Forest Lake to Comfort Lake, all tributaries and whatnot coming in, as well as the area from School Lake to Little Comfort Lake. So looking at that reach as well. And then there's also some pre-project monitoring scheduled for the Heath Avenue area that'll help to inform some of the work with the Iron Hand sand filter that's being proposed in that watershed. The total cost for the program is $210,859, and we are under the budget by approximately $9,000 for monitoring this year. This includes all EOR and staff time, equipment, lab costs, and whatnot. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the monitoring plan. Dr. Ann Wilkinson is also here to answer any questions regarding the EOR scope of work, the parts that they'll be helping out for the monitoring plan this year.
Anyone have questions?
I have a couple questions. Yes, thank you.
Manager Smalls, go ahead.
Yeah, it's on your cover page. It's the second bullet point down. It's the CAMP program, and where you list that Forest Lakes. Forest Second Lake and Third Lake basins, and then the other lakes listed there were going to be covered. Why was Forest Lake #1 not mentioned there?
It should have been there. There might be we differentiated between volunteer versus staff, so maybe something got mixed up there. But Forest Lake 1 is included. We do have a volunteer for that lake. Manager Schmaltz is covering that this year, which thank you for that. So that is included. We don't have volunteers for Second or Third Lake. We haven't for the last couple of years, and staff have covered those lakes. So yeah, I apologize if there's a typo on that.
No, I was asking a reverse question actually, because I wanted to know whether we had volunteers for 2 and 3, because with a lake association members of 500 people, we should be able to find 2 people to do the volunteer work, and then the camp people can fill in when they're not available. Would that be a better approach, you think, Blaine, or not?
We definitely could try to get a few more volunteers. I will say that staff are going out and doing the profile on both of those lakes and collecting bottom water. So we're already there. It really isn't that much more effort to do the camp protocol on top of that, since we're already in the lake at the deep point there. So if we're trying to engage more people, then yes, definitely it would be great to get a couple more volunteers on board. And if the Lake Association could help facilitate that, that would be great.
Yeah, let's see what we can do, because this is one way we can get people involved in the lake directly. And then once they're involved in the lake and they get curious and so forth, then they can lead into either, more activity in the Lake Association, or maybe even joining the CAC. I think a lot of our members come from those volunteers into the CAC, and then from there, they can very easily come into onto the Watershed District Board. So let me see what we can do, if we can get a couple people to do that, Blaine. I'll let you know.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, I had another question, also the same question for bullet #3. We're doing profiles on for the dissolved oxygen for Lake 2 and 3, and I understand that they're, that's the lake getting the alum treatment, and then the lake prior to the alum treatment. But doesn't this have some impact on on Forest Lake 1, and wouldn't we want to know, well, what the oxygen content is for that if we're going to especially do another alum treatment? So I'm just raising the question, and maybe we did that last year and we don't have to do it again this year. So I'm just checking on it to make sure we're not overlooking something.
Yeah, that's a good question. Typically, we've only done the bottom water on lakes that we're either contemplating an alum treatment or have already implemented to kind of monitor that, to see how the effectiveness of that treatment has, how it's affecting the lake. We have not done Lake 1, Forest Lake 1 in the past. That lake tends to mix more than the other lakes, so we don't get that anoxic condition as much in the bottom of the lake. It's a much shallower basin than the other three. That's one of the reasons that we haven't monitored that with the profile data in the past. If that's something of interest, we could discuss that and see if we could include that as well.
Yeah, I do the monitoring on the lake, and I do know not every year, but there are years when we definitely have, a fall effect in terms of where we had good water quality, and then all of a sudden we get into the lack of dissolved oxygen, and we get some pretty aggressive blooms towards the end of the year, like in August and September. So if we can afford to do that, it might be well to look at, especially if we're doing the other two lakes. But whatever the budget allows.
Okay, I'll discuss that with the monitoring team and
Great.
see what we can do.
That's all I have.
All right,
I have a
anyone
question.
else?
I have a question, please.
Go ahead, Manager Taves.
Blaine, one of the things we're talking about more often here is flood mitigation. Will these flow monitoring of these streams, will that help to inform that question of where we're going to hold back water in case of flooding? The 90 acre feet of water? Will that help us to identify those areas where we can do that?
I think some of the flow monitoring can help inform the modeling effort that EOR's undertaking, which will identify some of those areas where we have storage potential.
Okay.
The flow monitoring that we're doing right now is trying to determine flow weighted loading for the systems here. So it's more directed at nutrient loading throughout the system.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, if not, we haven't had a person set. No, we did.
No, not yet.
You sure? Okay, we need a motion. There are actually two, and they're up on the screen. So who would like to make the motion for motion one?
I will make the motion to approve the 2025 monitoring plan as presented in this memo.
Thank you, Manager Taves. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Manager Schmaltz.
Thank you, Manager Schmaltz. Okay, roll call, please.
All right, I think Manager Lowe joined,
Okay,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Anderson.
aye. All right, motion number two. To enter into agreement with the EOR to complete tasks 1 through 3 in accordance with the 3-04-2025 scope of work. And in an amount not to exceed to $91,327. Who wants to make that motion?
I'll make that motion. I move to authorize the administrator on advice of council to enter into an agreement with EOR to complete tasks 1 through 3 as in accordance with the 3-04-025 scope of work and in an amount not to exceed $91,327.
Thank you, Manager Schmaltz. Who will be the second board member? I will do it. I counted 5. All right, I'll second the motion.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Thank you, motion carries. Under old business, moving along here. Who's going to be, this is the floodplain vulnerability assessment update, and who's going to lead this?
I can give an introduction.
Oh, thank you, Emily.
Madam Chair and managers. So we had our 2 community workshops in the month of February. The meeting notes from those were uploaded to the board packet, and some presentation slides were uploaded to the board packet as well. We've got Dan Pfeiffer from Zan Associates and Camilla Carell from Emmons and Olivier Resources here tonight. Dan is going to share his screen and give kind of a recap of those workshops.
Thank you, Emily. Managers, board of managers, give me a second. Let me make sure that I can get this up. Hopefully this works. Everyone see the slide?
Still loading. There it is.
All right. Yeah, so as Emily mentioned, we held our community and technical staff workshops. I'm just going to go over. So as a reminder, for the community workshop, we sent out about 600 letters to addresses in the Forest Lake and Shields Lake priority areas. So based on kind of where the initial modeling from EOR had shown some high-risk areas. We also distributed about 300 flyers. So the same of the 600 that received letters, the other about 300 in priority areas around that. So thinking around the Schilling Park area, a lot of those houses in those neighborhoods. We also hung door flyers. We had 12 RSVPs. We had 9 community members attend the February 12th workshop. At that workshop, we kind of went through some processes around some mapping, standing around a couple of the maps, drawing concerns and priority areas, and then had some facilitated discussion. Key concerns and impacts that were noted at that meeting included flooding in the residential areas and the golf course area near Shields Lake. There were some noted sump pump usage in residential areas near Schilling Lake or Schilling Park throughout the year. Some of the residents noted that tree loss from flooding has started to occur. There was some discussion about water being stagnant or slower drainage than in the past. So some of the property owners that have lived there for a long time, concerns with that new developments will make problems worse for them. There were tax concerns with now unusable land, and then some concerns around potential mosquito increases with stagnant water. In the notes from the community workshop are some photos from both the golf course. One of the superintendents from the golf course was there and provided some photos, and then some of the homeowners that are right kind of by Schilling Park sent in some photos of what they've experienced recently. Then we held a technical staff workshop. So these are with technical staffs from County, Forest Lake, Wyoming, Boil Water, Soil Resources, Minnesota Department of Health, Metropolitan Council, and others. That workshop was held on February 27th. 12 technical staff attended. Some of the high-level discussion themes. So participants really felt that the watershed district should be the catalyst for flood resiliency and planning. There were quite a bit of discussion around kind of taking the plans that are in multiple places and kind of having a coalescence around that in order to kind of engage the public in that and in an understanding. There was some acknowledgement that some past development practices have affected the Forest Lake priority area. So if you think about the development area, so a lot of development on what probably was former wetlands in the Forest Lake area. Those have had impacts. And so as we think about potential solutions, potential improvements, being cognizant that there's not a lot of green field space over there. The need to plan for future development in other priority areas so that the same outcomes aren't occurring. And so there was a lot of discussion about that as you look at the Shield Lake and Comfort Lake area, that there's more what is agriculture or greenfield that could be interested for developers. And so developing some kind of plan together with, all the other partners is something that could go out to developers, saying that here's the plan that we have for the area, might be beneficial. And then continued collaboration, that all of the partners really wanted to continue to collaborate. And then the cities especially noted that need for technical guidance, including like the maintenance practices for the watershed district, that often the cities are maintaining ditches and they might not be the experts in maintaining those, and looking to the watershed district for some expert guidance from those. Kind of the next steps. So there's the summary report of our findings. EOR has a flood resiliency action plan planned to go to the board at the end of the month. And then hoping to see some feedback from board members, the board on potential actions. So like some of the stuff that we talked about in the meetings and coming out of the meetings were kind of short. We try to group things into short, medium, and long term. So short term, really property owner awareness campaign. So thinking about 600 letters plus 300 flyers. We did talk about it at the community meeting. And one of the property owners just noted that if you're not being affected by flooding right now, you're kind of not aware of it. You're not paying attention to it. And so needing to, have some kind of awareness, building that up. Property owners did ask, there were some questions about, does this mean I need to buy different insurance? What does this mean? So some kind of resource guide towards for homeowners and residents and business owners, business property owners. Maintenance guide for city staff. So how to maintain those, the existing stormwater systems, what guidance the watershed district has for that. And then start looking the thoughts of like cost share programs to improve landscape resiliency to flooding and severe rain events, what that is, trying to develop that with some of the partners. On the medium term, there's kind of looking at that publicly owned wetland restoration activities, or publicly owned land, already publicly owned land that could be used for some stormwater management, thinking about like, are there parks that could have reuse or storage systems? And then reviewing rules and policies with the partner agencies and helping to kind of develop those out. And then the longer term items that were thought of were that large scale multi-landowner, like regional stormwater treatment capital projects. This was discussed especially in the like greenfield spaces where developers might be trying to push in, that there was a kind of consensus that if there was a storm regional plan for those areas, like a small area regional plan, it would be easier to get the developers into that system rather than having them think about stormwater as a last item where they're just trying to fit it into the space. And then also like greenway corridor acquisitions, easements, enhancements, restorations, and maintaining some of that. I went through that fairly quickly. I know Camilla's on the call also to take questions.
I have a question. You've only had one of these, right? And this was the one that took place at the Forest Lake High School?
Yeah, one community at Forest Lake High School that you attended,
Yeah,
President Anderson, and then there was a technical staff one. So
no, I know that.
technical staff.
Yeah, and I've got a comment on that one too. But there wasn't any discussion in your overview here about the people that lived on the edge of Bixby Park, where the channel comes out and then it goes to the east a bit, and it's right along that row of houses where the old, I think it was a nursery. They had trees and flower nursery. But they were very concerned about what they're perceiving as flooding in that area. And I didn't see that mentioned in your report.
That's what I mean by that's the area for the flooding in the residential areas and the pictures that were included. That's
Okay.
from that area, Bixby. I might have misspoke. I called it Schilling Park. It's that other side of, it's the 8th Avenue area.
Okay, so it's still Bixby Park we're talking about, right? Not Schilling Park?
Yeah, right up of 8th Avenue Northwest.
Right,
Yeah,
but that
that's-
would be on the other side of those houses. I guess I'm talking about, they're talking, most of the conversation that I was involved with was on the Bixby Park side. Very concerned about that stormwater coming out of the city. And I think there's a place across the freeway that's also draining into that area as well. But their point is that that ditch just keeps widening after rainstorms, and so it's creeping closer to their homes from the backside.
Yeah, and that they also noted that it appears to be draining slower than it used to in the past. That it used to, the water used to move fairly consistently through there. And they did note that it is slower running, slower
Right.
movement.
Well, yeah, and I think that those are important comments because it informs the staff, that has to go out there and pull those logs, to allow the water to run in the spring. We may have to do it sooner. I don't know what the answer is, but it was a real problem and that's all they talked about. So I'd like to see that in your report. I think that's not really giving that conversation the attention that it deserves.
All right.
So we don't need to discuss it anymore, but I would like to have you recognize that and whatever detailed report you're producing, that you include that conversation, because we need to look at that area. Okay. All right, any other comments or questions?
President Anderson?
Yes, Manager Baki.
I think what the purpose of the community meeting was to gather input from the community. And I think you really did a fine job of doing that. As I look at the notes that you have in your presentation, it really gives us some good talking points, such as the watershed district being a catalyst and the city of Forest Lake wanting to have a roundtable with the watershed district. I mean, these are all really good talking points that can help move us forward as we address this issue. So what are the next steps? Will there be another community meeting, or what do you see, Dan, as we should be looking at as next steps?
Yeah. We've talked internally, Emily and Camilla and I have talked about this. It's somewhat of as soon as kind of the model is ready to roll out to the public, there should be some awareness campaign around that and kind of working with the cities to help build up that awareness of this. I think that's really got to be the starting point for it, because it's, it is interesting, that even the attendees from the meeting, that if you haven't been flooded, if you haven't had, wet basements, if you haven't had, roads flooded, if you're not experiencing it, you're not really noticing it. And so you might not be aware of it. And that really came out from the residents along 8th Avenue, that Bixby Park area. That's really one of the big takeaways from them, is that if you're not experiencing it, you're not really aware, and which means that like an awareness campaign can help to build that support for programs that help manage the build up flood resiliency.
Right. Can we move back to that slide that showed the results from meeting with the technical people in our LGUs? I just echo what Manager Baki was talking about. So this is very encouraging and very different from the perspective that we had, I think, prior to this meeting. Were you at the meetings? You guys were all at the meetings, correct? With the staff? This seems like they want to rely on the watershed district to handle this whole piece. And that is very enlightening because we had this concept that we were at loggerheads basically with the technical people from our communities, some of them, one of them in particular, but this is encouraging. And I think that we, as a board, need to talk about this more in depth at a future meeting on how we can actually accomplish this. And so as soon as we can, we should have sort of a outline of how that would work, and so that we can make a decision at the board level to proceed. But this is really, really encouraging. I think I've talked about it before, but Capital Region Watershed did a tremendous amount of work with the city of St. Paul and other suburbs to build, I guess, in a different image, that Ford plant in the Highland Park area. And it is absolutely beautiful what they did. And one of the things that stood out for me in that summer tour was that the Capital Region Watershed developed memorandums of agreement to allow the district, the watershed district, to actually do all of the work, of course, with the plantings of these more natural areas that they put in around the Mississippi River and even in the downtown areas of Highland Park. And so they put it in. They were responsible for the first 3 years to make sure that all the plants that were used are established. And the city had nothing to do with it at that point and through this period. I think their third year is up the next year. So they may have a memorandum of understanding that goes beyond that point. But this is exactly what I'm reading here, is that the cities want us to do this. We're the technical experts and they're all on board with this. So hallelujah. It's really good. Okay,
President Anderson,
yes, Manager Lowe, go ahead.
thanks. I just had a question with respect to the 900 contacts or invitations that went out and having the 12 individuals or maybe it was 9 show up. Is that pretty typical for the coverage that you canvassed, or I guess what was the hope of how many people would turn out based on the area of focus?
Our goal was somewhere in that like 10 to 15 range for actual workshop. Any more and you start to have this kind of challenge with facilitating like effective conversations. But I would have expected more RSVPs or phone calls asking about it. Because it is, it says watershed district, flood resiliency planning. Like it just has enough words that I would have expected more people to call and ask questions, at least to see if they especially if you got one by mail and then one hanging on your door. So it was a little bit lower of a response rate. And I think some of that has to do with the awareness of it.
Thank you.
Well, that just underscores this continuing conversation that we're having about marketing who we are and what we do. And getting the public to understand, what it is. We've been around for a long time. They know that they're paying tax to us. So, so again, that's just reinforcement that we're on the right path on that particular issue to me. And the sooner we can get that done, the better. Okay, very good. There's no vote that we need to take on this, is it? Is there a motion to do something?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So Dan, can you go to the last slide? So the next step is that EOR is going to put a scope of work together to bring to the board at the March 27th meeting. And that scope will take the model the next step, right? What types of solutions, what kinds of practices can be put in place in the drainage area or in these priority drainage areas to alleviate the flooding that the model's predicting will happen under a future extreme rainfall event? So we were curious to hear from the board if the things that we've identified here, which came out of those 2 meetings, make sense to include in that evaluation. Is there anything here that you don't agree with?
We really have to operate on the same data you have. And in fact, you probably have more insight than we do. So we have to rely on you that there's probably a lot of things we could do in a lot of different areas. But again, if we follow the Pareto principle of, 20% of our effort should give 80% of the results. So we need to be especially careful, I think, especially if we're dealing with a city who's got limited funds, that we bring forward the things that we think. Well, we got 2 issues. One is that some larger projects might be more difficult to do, but they provide higher value. So we have to make that judgment. Do we take simpler, smaller, more costly per result projects, or do we decide that we want to, take 1 or 2 big ones and try to move them ahead? So I hopefully that you can provide some of that insight to us to which way we might want to go. And then the second thing is we certainly got to have the city on board with what we're going to present to the public, because we're not going to finance this whole thing ourselves, and they have to be an integral part of this. And so we don't want to present something and then have them say, well, we don't really agree with that. So I think those are the 2 things that concern me the most as far as extracting what we have to extract from that next meeting to move forward. So just some thoughts.
So does it make sense then, rather than coming with a scope at the March 27th board meeting, to have the board and staff meet with the cities and do one-on-one meetings to see what they would like to see?
If you think they'll put the time in to actually come back with some valid and thoughtful attempt to do that, yes. Otherwise, you could take what you think is best, take it to them and see how they react to it. I think I'd feel more comfortable with you taking the lead on that than having them step forward on their own to do it. Because I just know from the last meeting we had on the shoreline thing that on the redoing of the North Shore Trail, that the city definitely is pressed for money. That's why they didn't do more on that road project. So we're going to have them on board with what we want to do if we're going to get any support from them. So I would suggest you make the recommendation to them and see how they respond to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. Those are my thoughts, but it's not just Forest Lake. It's the area, the communities, the LGUs that are in those highest priority flood areas that you've already identified. And just like we've attacked every single problem that we've had in the past, it's doing that general overview, but then identifying where those priority areas are, which is, in part of that introduction area. So that's following our logical process and scientific process that we've always used. And we, as I remember it, the priority areas were in the Comfort Lake subwatershed, and then also over by the Shields Lake area, I believe, in the Forest Lake subwatershed. So I think we've already identified those top priority areas. So I agree with Manager Smalls that we need to have your expertise putting something together based also on the comments that the LGU technical people gave us. They said, we want you to do this. We don't have the time, we don't have the technique or technical backgrounds. So I think EOR needs to do that. As our chief engineers, you need to provide us with a next step report.
The other question I had involves the lakes, because when we get a lot of rain, the lakes are going to fill up pretty quick, and the drainage out of those lakes is very slow. If we add 15 inches to Forest Lake, it's not going to be draining out in a couple of weeks. So I would like to have a better feel because that involves a lot of people that have relatively low level buildings to the lake level. And so if we get a 100-year rain or a 10-inch rain, what would it do to this? How many shoreline properties would be flooded? I don't think, maybe none. I don't know. I didn't see much in the graphs that we looked at earlier, I saw mostly roads and stuff like that, low spots. But there's gonna be a lot of water coming into the lakes, and I know that personally, because when you get a 2 or 3 inch rain, the lake goes up very quickly. And then goes down very slowly, so, if we can maybe just take a second look at that, Camelia, to make sure, and that would be for all the lakes too. I'm sure Comfort Lake is even probably worse off because they even have all the water coming down there, right? And it's a smaller
Mhm.
lake, so, and I don't know how big the outlet and what the drain rate is out of Comfort Lake, but it's probably not fast enough to drain it off quickly. So that would be the other
Yeah.
caveat that I think we should look at, because it influences a lot of people that might be concerned about this. And then we'd have something to tell them one way or the other too, which would certainly get them involved.
Well, and I agree with that, but I think that in preparing, I guess maybe we need to be more clear about it. But at this next step that we've been talking about, Anne is going to have to be involved in that as our civil engineer. And that is just a basic part of the next step. But if we have to call it out, right now we're calling it out. I mean, we expect to have it built on not just what we know about the water, but also what we know about the flow. And that is what I think our vulnerability map is supposed to show us, correct? Isn't that what it's supposed to show us?
Yep.
Okay, based on a certain identification of how much water it is, correct? So we've got the 50-year flood, is there a 10-year, I think, 10-year, 50-year, 100-year, based on the new criteria, not what it was before, 20 years ago, but on current, right? Current averages. So that's built into what this next step is, correct? All right. Okay, so I think we're gonna get what we need and an understanding, a deeper understanding of how to prioritize the areas that you've identified as needing assistance. And I think we should start moving on it as quickly as possible. And I think it also, we'll have to wait until Mike gets back, but I think that we need to do some type of contract with our LGUs, memorandums of understanding, whatever it's called, so that we can have clarity on what it is that they want us to do, and that we don't have any hiccups once we start the next few phases. Does the board agree with that?
I think the next step should be for Camilla to do the work, and then at the March 27th meeting, the board can look at that. And then from there, they could go to the city. If the board's comfortable with it, what we see, and we understand it, and it's clear to us what it's telling us, then I think you would then go to the city rather than going to the city, then coming to us.
Well, I agree with that, but we need to have that element of our steps so that we are including the city basically for updates and to keep them involved in it, but our district will be, and our engineering staff will be the ones that actually carry everything through.
I'm
Okay.
not sure that that's what they said. And Emily, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think they were just asking the watershed district to use their model to sort of spearhead the ideas. I also heard discussion around the need to identify roles and responsibilities in that technical workshop. And I also clearly heard the city of Forest Lake say that they saw a next step was to meet with the watershed district and talk about things without the state agencies there. So I didn't get the impression that they were asking the watershed district to do all this work on their behalf. What I heard was they would like to collaborate with the watershed district, and they would like to meet and kind of discuss options and solutions sooner than later. And also, just to clarify, at the next meeting, we're not coming with results, we're coming with a scope of work to
Correct.
look at next steps. So we've identified and created 2D maps, like you said, President Anderson, that show where there is flooding in these priority areas, in the Forest Lake drainage area and the Shields Lake drainage area. And so we've identified where there's flooding, but we need to, as a next step, say, here's how much storage you could put in the system, and here's how much flood reduction you can get. We won't solve the problem, but we will help mitigate the problem to the extent that we can.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
and
makes
I
a
Does that
lot of sense.
clarify a couple points?
Yeah, that's excellent clarification, Camilla. And I think, yeah, I forgot the scope of work is the next step. I said that you'd have results. I meant to say whatever you had offered at that meeting. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think we're all on board with that, but I didn't hear you include Comfort Lake subwatershed in that description. So we're not just talking about Forest Lake and Shields Lake, we're talking about the Comfort Lake drainage areas, correct? Comfort
Settle
Lake.
Sunrise downstream
Subwatershed.
of Forest Lake, yeah.
Mhm. Yes. Okay, good.
Could I add
All right.
something
Please,
to the
Greg.
conversation?
Yes.
So yeah, I've been listening. It's been a lot of good conversation here. I think what I envision for the next step, and Camilla and others correct me if I'm wrong. I think we bring in a scope of work at the next board meeting. That scope of work probably, well, it definitely should include these meetings with the cities, because it sounds like that's an important next step. And then also as part of that, we kind of wrap up this modeling effort and identify, areas and amounts of storage that we'd potentially like to get in this system. But I see that as just kind of another stepping stone. And I know Emily has identified potentially a really nice grant that we could apply for to do a lot of this work. So I would hope that maybe we could, take these next steps with the cities, wrap up the modeling stuff, provide some recommendations on what we think the next steps are, and then, apply for a pretty nice size grant to actually, take some of these bigger steps. Because all this stuff on this slide right here, that's, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of planning and engineering. That's not going to get accomplished with this next step. So I just kind of want to clarify that for folks and see if everyone kind of agrees that that's makes sense, and to try to leverage some grant funds if we can.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think that that's a good idea because that's how your engineering reports come to us for any project that we do with those steps clearly defined. So maybe that, maybe that can be done as well. Okay.
I agree with
All
that.
right.
The only thing that I would add to your description, Greg, is the point that Dan brought up earlier, that before or as this information gets shared with the public, it'll be important to do it in a very intentional and clear way, and to roll it out so that people get an understanding of what these impacts are related to climate change and what the district is leading in terms of flood reduction strategies and how they're partnering with the communities in the development of those strategies. So it'd be good to get Dan's thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, there'll definitely have to be more discussions with the Comfort Lake board here on what they want to roll out and how they want to roll that out.
Yeah.
That'll be critical. I don't know if Dan, if you have more you want to add to that.
No, just that yeah, it's that thoughtful rolling it out, and that can build the awareness without like overly scaring people, but making people understand like why it's important that the district's doing this and what it means. And I know the city was interested in having those conversations, and the city has leveraging some of the local cities, they can help amplify that message and build that awareness also.
Yeah, and I was at the technical meeting with the city, and it'll be interesting what the conversations are when we sit down with the city by themselves, because I think the city kind of felt like they were outnumbered by a bunch of state and county agencies. And I think part of the reason why they wanted that separate meeting was to maybe voice some concerns that they didn't feel comfortable voicing at that meeting. But I guess we'll wait and see how that goes.
So the next step is meeting with the local government units, correct? That are affected by which maybe all of them are, I don't know, I don't remember that map in complete detail. But I think, again, if you follow that practice that you've had in doing our projects, even our more complex projects with that engineering guidance or report, that would work really nicely here as well. And clearly laying out steps, whatever steps, how many there are going to be on that document. So you don't have to look at different documents, pull that all together, it's on one. Okay, I think we all understand it. Are there any other comments or questions? This is important.
President
So-
Anderson?
Yes, Manager Baki, go ahead.
Yes, and maybe this is a question for Emily. What grants are the grants that are being considered for this work? Federal grants or state grants? Given the political climate we're in right now, it sounds like federal grants are being pulled from many areas in the environment.
Yeah, Manager Baki, managers, that's a great question and something that I've been having a lot of conversations with our granting agencies about. We do have a few federal grants in play, and I'm told that they are not at risk right now. But specifically the ones for flood resiliency are actually state grants. So it's looking good on that, but that's a very good point and something we're keeping an eye on too.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, if not, will you put I think there's a motion that we have to do.
No motion.
Okay, just action?
It says action, I think we just forgot to take it off. We forgot to adjust that.
Okay, all right, there's no action on this item. So we don't need to provide any further direction to EOR on what to do, correct? I just want to make sure we don't have to wait on this.
I think we're clear.
All right, very good.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you. Let's move on. Number 5. Program, project update.
Yeah, I can handle that. Madam President, managers, just want to discuss a little bit about the project update for the month. Similar to past months, the things that I'd like to highlight are we have been making some progress on the Heath Avenue Iron Hand sand filter, progress with the mortgage company to release the property so it can be officially sold to the district. We're making some progress on that and hope to have, hoping to close on that in the next month and a half or so we get a few things ironed out. So that's moving forward. And then the other thing is the North Shore Circle Park shoreline enhancement. We do have a signed agreement with the city in place for that project. And the RFQ for project construction was just recently advertised. And I believe that closes at the end of the month. And we hope to get that project going this summer. Happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Any comments or questions?
I have one question, since nobody's asking about the projects. I forgot to ask a question on monitoring, and I thought Blaine had left, but since he's still here, maybe I can just throw it out very quickly. It's on page 10 of your memo, and it has to do with the total phosphorus of past examples of School Lake Channel, the channel mouth, and the School Lake itself. And there we show 0.15, 0.13, and 0.05 mg per liter. Is mg per liter milligrams or micrograms? Is it the same designation as we use for impairing a lake of 40 mgs per liter? Blaine?
The mgs would be milligrams. Micrograms would be like the U-shape, UG,
Okay.
essentially.
And
Go
40
ahead.
micrograms per liter is the standard for the lake, so that'd be 0.04 milligrams per liter.
For the lake?
Yep.
Okay, that was my question, because I thought those numbers were awful low against 40. So you're saying the number
Very high.
comparing is 0.04.
Yes, they're high.
So they're 3 times higher than basically what an impaired lake would have.
Correct, but it is a much bigger volume of
So it is
water.
an area we really should focus on then,
It
obviously.
is.
I was a little
Yes.
confused. I couldn't remember that everybody uses a different designation and it makes a world of difference, right? Like 3 decimal points. So thank you.
Yeah, School Lake has had manure basically running down to it from the farm above a slope for decades, probably 50 at least. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Blaine. Thanks,
Any
Ann.
other comments? Thank you, Blaine. Next item is the permit program update.
Madam President, I can cover this item. We provided a recording of the permitting update for 2024. So I'll do a quick brief overview, and then if any board members have any questions, I can answer those. So we had a very high number of inspections completed in 2024. We had 1,767 inspections. That's compared to 1,304 in 2023. The amount of time required to complete our inspections was we required a little more time in 2024 compared to 2025. It went from 7.9 inspections per hour to 5.9. I'm still happy with that. It's a great increase over our 1.9 inspections per hour of 2021. So I think our permitting staff did a really good job in 2024, getting a lot of permit inspections done in a timely manner. The overall mean site inspection compliance was 95.7. So we're maintaining some very good protections of our lakes through this program. We had 39 permits approved in 2024 compared to 33 in 2023. However, a decrease from 52 in 2022. We only had one permit trigger our stormwater rules. The rest were all sediment and erosion control, which is a decrease from previous years. And then also we took some of our sediment and erosion control permits in-house to reduce costs for our permittees. The average review cost went down from 350 to 191. However, we still rely on EOR heavily for our more complicated permits, and we go to them with any questions we have. Outside of our permit program, Victoria has been working very hard on our annual maintenance agreement inspections. She created a self-inspection tool, which has greatly increased the number of maintenance holders submitting self-reports. We still are doing inspections through staff as well. So I am available for any questions from the board members for our 2024 permitting program.
Are there any questions, comments?
President Anderson?
Yes, Mr. Baki, please.
You know,
Go ahead.
I'm going to show my ignorance here. I'm really not familiar with our permitting program and what the inspections look like. I don't know if the other board members would benefit from a more detailed walkthrough, like telling us what an inspection looks like. And especially this online program that Tori has established, how that works. And if I'm the only one interested in that, then maybe I just need to show up and you can talk me through it.
Sure, I'll give a quick overview. It was Victoria who's been working on our maintenance declaration self-reporting tool. So basically we have two different inspections we do. The first one is for all of our active permits where construction is ongoing. So that was the 1,767 site inspections we did. So what that inspection looks like is we'll show up in person at the construction site and we'll kind of look for common issues. So the first thing we'll look for when we pull up to site is any track out onto the road. This would be caused by poor maintenance or lack of a construction entrance. Then we'll usually do a walk around the perimeter of the sediment and erosion control to make sure that the silt fence and biologs are still in place. And then kind of the third most common issue we'll see is improper disposal of concrete. So we want to see that, you know, being properly disposed of so it's not leaching into the ground. So, you know, with a smaller site, like a single family home, you know, that lap around the construction site might only take 5 minutes. Especially with our staff being out on site each week and being familiar with the sites. When you get into larger permits like developments, that's when you'll see that inspection time increase as we have to look at a lot more ground. So that's our active site inspections. And then the second inspections I was talking about, after our permits have been closed out, if they have stormwater features or buffers that were required by a permit, we inspect those to make sure that they're still functioning correctly. And the holders of that property are supposed to submit an annual report, which we've had low returns on in the past. So that's where Victoria made the self-reporting tool where you just can go on your phone, fill out a little form and take some pictures and submit it to us. So those are the two different types of inspections we do. Did that answer your question, Manager Baki?
Yes, thank you. That's very helpful.
I think it's important to just reiterate the purpose of doing rules and monitoring how those rules are being implemented. So the permittee comes in to the district, of course, with their drawings, their engineering drawings and so forth. Depending upon what they're doing, it can be this very sophisticated or maybe just hand drawn. But the point is that we want everyone to understand best management practices when you're doing land changes. You know, building whatever, building a house, building a development, it's all pretty much the same, but there are best management practices in place from the agencies primarily. And those have to be met. Our rules as they're written have to be met in order for us to keep protecting the water. And for the first number of years, probably 15 years, we were just cleaning up bad practices. And now what you want to make sure that you're doing, now that we've got the water's fairly clean, we want to make sure that new development, new land use changes are not impacting the work that we've already done. So it has a real purpose, not just to help the landowner do what they're expected to do. Sometimes they, in the past, didn't know. Well, they know now in order for them to be part of the solution for water pollution. There you go. Did it stick? But it is very important. It has a very important purpose, and we want to make sure that it's done diligently as well, because if we were to go to court, if you're not treating every permittee the same, you can get into a lot of trouble. So we have a system now that assures us of that. And I'm sure you're checking on the self-reporting to make sure that what they've given us is correct. So if you aren't, then you should be doing that
Yeah.
visual. Yeah.
We inspect.
Okay, good.
Inspect.
Yeah, so I'm really proud of the permit program that we have, and the purposes, the rules, I think, need a little tweaking in places, like I said before, but that's to be expected after this many years. So thank you very much for your report and for the work you do day to day.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, running along here. Next item is summary and approval of board direction. Do you have anything, Mr. Chuck?
Madam Chair, managers, just a couple of details. One is that staff will discuss with the monitoring team getting dissolved oxygen profiles on Forest Lake #1 with respect to floodplain vulnerability. Zan et al. Will give some more prominence in the report to the remarks of the folks on the edge of Bixby Park about the encroaching water footprint and slower drainage. And then just reference to EOR coming back next month with technical advice as to next steps.
That sounds complete to me.
President Anderson,
Yes,
could I
Mr.
also
Hockey.
ask Mr. Holtman to include that the SMART goals will be distributed or shared with the board managers? And I'm not sure who will do that. Do you, Manager Anderson?
Well, it'll either be, I'm sure, Emily or Tori. So we'll figure that out, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any other business before the board? If not, a motion to adjourn is in order. Oh, yes?
I just had a quick
Angelo?
question. Is there a reason why manager reports are once a month versus every other meeting?
Board manager reports,
Yeah.
is that what you? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, they're usually the last meeting of the month. When we started, this was a special meeting. And we didn't have it all the time, but it was saved on the calendar in case we did. As we got busier and busier with especially projects, we decided that 2 meetings a month was necessary just to keep the projects flowing. And I think we're still in that mode, especially, since we're doing the work on the green space and the vulnerability reports. It's nice to keep those projects working on a more frequent basis rather than delaying them a full month. So, so that was the rationale behind it all.
But as far as the
There's a couple of things
managers,
that came up. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
no, you finish up, Chris, go ahead.
There were just a couple of things that came up at the Lake Association meeting last night. I had emailed Manager Schmalz and Mike about it. I just didn't know if it was appropriate to talk during this meeting or not.
Yeah, it is. We could have added that at the beginning, but if the board doesn't mind, we can add, what's the topic? What's the topic? Manager reports?
Sure.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
Jerry Grudner had mentioned that at the city council meeting on Monday that the city had approved $150,000 to repair ice heaving in Lakeside Park. I didn't know if the watershed was part of that planning or not. And then Chris Perucci, who's the president of the Lake Association, had mentioned that in his negotiations or talks with Pizza Pub, he dropped kind of a surprising comment about some cattails that were approved to be removed so they could build a wading beach at Willow Point there. So I didn't know if any of those things were on the radar of the watershed or not.
I can comment to the Lakeside Park. They have submitted an application with the DNR to repair the ice heaves. The work happens below the ordinary high water level, so that is the DNR's jurisdiction. So we have seen the work for that. Their plans for this summer are just to repair the damage that took place. They may have long-term plans for a larger upgrade of the park, but that's kind of a budget constraint they have as well. As far as the cattails, once again, that would be a DNR permit for aquatic vegetation removal. But I was not aware of that.
But just to follow up on that, I have sent a couple letters to Mike about the opportunity that we have with the repairing of the ice eaves in the park. I had hoped that we would be able to meet with the city and offer an option of perhaps doing 1/3 of that area with maybe a couple of different type of natural shoreline restorations rather than putting rock in. And rock in again, which is just going to get torn up again in 3 or 4 years. And this would be a test that perhaps we could even get some grants through Emily to cover that shoreline restoration, such it would be a highly visible thing for the public to see, and would help us communicate the importance of natural shoreline restoration in protecting shoreline. So I don't know where we stand on that. I don't know whether they actually put out a contract for that or just approve the money. But I'm hoping that we can.
Manager Schmaltz, they are interested in partnering with us on that longer term time frame. They just want to get it repaired this year. But we have been in talks with the city about possibly partnering with them and looking for grant money for a more natural shoreline at Lakeside Park.
Well, thanks for that update, Mike. So this maybe fits right into this discussion, but I think the manager's report that comes at the end of, the administrator's report that comes at the end of the month isn't intended to keep us up to date in real time. It's an option just to look at what's been going on. And but I think on the other hand, it's just as important, and I think Manager Anderson will agree, that if something's happening in the city, in our jurisdiction, that we should be aware of as managers, we need to find out about it as soon as it happens. So if you've been meeting with them, a note to the boards telling us that what you're doing would be very helpful, because we meet with these people all the time, either in our own lake association meetings or just by casual contact with somebody on the council. And if we're not aware this is going on, it puts us in an awkward position. So I think there's a need for the manager's report once a month, but there's also a need to make sure that the managers, the board managers are advised of what's happening in their area that they should know about, just to be able to talk with their own constituents in an intelligent manner. So I would just like to make that recommendation as we go forward here, to keep us informed when things like this occur. So it's a good question, Chris, and I think it was a good topic to discuss at this meeting. So thanks for bringing it up.
I just had one follow-up for Mike. With respect to the cattails being, below the high water line and the jurisdiction of the DNR, is the installation of a wading beach something that would then apply to the watershed, given it's going to be above the high water line, or?
It would likely be below the ordinary high water level. But we would want to see what the plans are. The DNR has a lot of regulations surrounding what type of beaches they allow to be put in on shorelines. I can follow up with Dan Skolin, the area hydrologist, to see what conversations he's had.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, I think to address this issue, we should put this topic about having manager reports twice a month instead of once. We can certainly do this at the next meeting. So we can add that to that. You're taking notes. We've got the audio too, but let's just do that. Let's make sure that we address these issues that were just brought up at the next meeting. And to your point, Manager Schmaltz, sometimes there's even, and we have it now, we have this weekly bulletin that we're getting on activities that come out. And that's been primarily civic events, special board meetings from our LGUs and so on. But it could be elevated to be more of the administrator or the supervisors we have in each of our departments. If there's something pressing going on with one of our major sub-watersheds, that could be added to that list. But let's make that discussion. Let's make both of those points discussions at the next meeting, and presumably actions as well. Because the board can decide what to do with that. Okay? Is that clear?
Yep, good suggestion.
All right, thank you so much. Any other items? Are you raising your hand, Manager Lowe? Oh, okay. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll
I'll
move
make
that we
that
adjourn.
motion.
I think Manager Smalls came in first, so
I'll
we'll have
second.
you do. Thank you, Manager Taves.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Thanks, everybody. It is
Good meeting. Good night, everyone.
It
Thank you.
is 7:50, so we're in good shape. Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.